All right, everyone, the update live stream just ended. It was 2 hours long, and we have a ton of information, as you can see from all my notes here. You all are free to pause it, read the notes yourself. I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to try to keep this short, about 10 minutes long. First off, we have this update live stream, and then the next one coming out on October 10th. It's going to be, looks like 2 hours long as well, and it's going to go over a lot of the mechanical details, is what I would say. Things like balance changes, things like, what's going to happen to resistance, all the numbers and math. So that's going to be arguably more important than the season 2 overview. This one in general just went over the mechanics and things to expect coming in season 2, which starts, for those of you that are curious, October 17th. So in 2 weeks from today, we're going to get that season, which is pretty important. With that said, let's dive into it. First off, we have the new storyline. Now, I didn't really consider too much of this. They didn't talk about it too much of this, but basically I summed it up in one sentence. You have Lord Zir coming over to take Sanctuary over with his vampires. Pretty simple. If you guys are curious about the storyline, well, I'll leave that to actually experiencing it, because that's kind of the whole point, right? First off, though, we have the vampiric right system. This was kind of like, okay, is this going to be like the new Malignant Hearts? Yeah, kind of. So essentially, you're going to go around, you're going to steal souls, you're going to unleash them for certain powers, kind of just based on what things you have slotted in, where you have 5 slots to unlock and upgrade powers. And in order to unlock those powers, you're going to need these things called potent blood. Now, potent blood is dropped through particularly blood seekers, but these are kind of, I guess you'd say, like the unlock slots for your malignant hearts, right? They have very similar powers to them and similar powers to like the legendary powers. They're also having armor, being able to upgrade with packs. You have the defensive / offensive and utility aspects to this. Realistically, if I could sum this up in one kind of sentence, it's basically glorified malignant hearts and legendary powers. That's pretty much it. There is going to be some new monsters and types to fight, but realistically, when you're considering the vampiric right system, I would just look at okay, we have basically, instead of the malignant hearts, we have the vampiric rights. Blood Harvest, though, this is the other piece of content coming in season 2. It's basically new Helltide zones, but it's constantly active, so it's not going to be like an hour downtime. Like the Helltide zones, you can earn vampiric keys to open caches. You can earn certain resources to bait blood seekers to you. So these are kind of randomly found in places, but with these resources from the Blood Harvest, you can actually go ahead and like force blood seekers to come to you, which is important to get that potent blood so you can unlock those powers and upgrade them. On top of that, the rewards will not disappear from your Blood Harvest after it's over. So that's really, really important to note, because like Helltide zones, well, you're going to be earning all these resources and you don't want it to disappear at the end of it. That'd be pretty unfortunate. There's also going to be the Hunter's Acclaim. It's kind of like a new shop and can be participated, or I should say, you have to participate in the Blood Harvest to access the shop, because you kind of have to kill monsters to get enough renown or acclaim to get certain items. Then we get into the really, really important part, in my opinion, and that's the end game bosses. So they talked a lot about end game bosses, but what's cool about this, a lot of people are asking, it's going to be both for Eternal and Seasonal realms. This is really, really important, because a lot of people do not want to play Seasons, and really they're just waiting for a new update to really get them back into the game, or new content or whatever. And well, the Eternal realm endgame bosses hopefully is interesting to some of you. The new bosses have unique drops. So they have a specific loot table, each one of them does. And it looks like it's going to overlap to the natural world. Like the natural world, the nightmare dungeons, you're going to be able to farm a lot of these same items, but it's going to be completely random, right? So for those of you that are like, oh man, I'm really looking for, I don't know, penitent greaves, my boots, I cannot find them anywhere. Well, ideally, a lot of these bosses are going to have these specific unlocks. You'll have like 5 uniques or 3 uniques from the rogue, 3 uniques from the druid or whatever. There's 5 different unique bosses, and you can target farm your items. These are kind of must farms, in my opinion. But in order to farm these bosses, you have to unlock their specific unlocks. And the way you do this is kind of like Ubers in Diablo 3, where you're going to do a specific piece of content, like the Tree of Whispers, Nightmare Dungeons, Helltide Zones. You're going to earn resources, and then eventually you're going to use those resources to essentially be a key to fight the boss. Each one has a specific elemental focus, which means you're going to need specific elemental resistance. And this is going to be more in depth next week when we actually get more information about the resistance, but it's seemingly built around the resistance system. So whether or not that's a good thing or bad thing, well, we'll have to see next week, because if they do it poorly, then this could be a really, really bad thing. Uber uniques are now attainable, apparently. They said that you're going to know many players within a clan that actually have Uber uniques. To me, what this means is, yeah, you're more dedicated players like Rax, like Woody, or even potentially like myself are going to be able to attain Uber uniques. It's not going to be like your average player is going to have them. It's going to be the top 1%, top 5%. That's a big difference, though, because before it was the top 0.000000001%, right? So that's a good thing, and they should be rare. They are Uber uniques, and this also does give a chance for your casual players to unlock them if they are able to be attained as such. But it seems that they are tied to the endgame bosses. You also, which is kind of cool, can trade the summoning materials with other players. So if you have, let's say, a bunch of one boss keys, then you can trade it to another player and get their boss material, right? So if you want to fight a specific boss, well, you hate doing Tree of Whispers, you're like, hey, I got a bunch of Nightmare Dungeon resources to unlock this specific boss. I'm going to go ahead and give you that for the Tree of Whispers boss. So kind of cool. They also talked a little bit about the October 10th live stream. They said resistance are being reworked. There's going to be class updates, and basically all uniques are getting updated. So again, this is like the math aspect. There's a bunch of other stuff that they mentioned, but these are the three kind of key points. Then when you dive into the gameplay updates, okay, this is where it also gets really, really crazy. First off, Scores Level Escape will save hardcore players if disconnected. We knew about this from the previous, update live streams. This one's huge, though. Experience bonuses are multiplicative now. What this means is, let's say you jump into World Tier 3 or 4. Well, it's going to multiply your World Tier bonuses. Not necessarily multiply over each other, but let's say you have an elixir and you get a 5% XP bonus. Before, that would be, let's say, World Tier 4. You get a 300% XP because of the 200% increase in monster kills, right? That'd be 305. But now it's going to be 315% XP. Basically, what they mentioned is overall, they're going to be 40% faster to get to 100. They say they want it to be achievable, but to be honest, 40% faster to get to 100, it's still not achievable for the vast majority of players, but it is a nice bonus, I think. They also mentioned they're going to be giving you waypoints unlocked with Skip Campaign, and that the renown rewards are going to be persisting through seasons. Once again, we knew about this before, but basically, if you finish the renown, you're going to get your skill points and Paragon points at level 1 at the start of a new season. This is a huge bonus, and they say 40% faster to level 100, right? But that could maybe even be faster, because now your 1 to 50 process is going to be way, way faster if you have Paragon points, if you have skill points. I guess you're not going to get the Paragon points until level 50, but if you are level 50, bam, it's immediately getting a bunch of Paragon points is actually huge, because those early Paragon points really do matter. Open world monsters now keep your level. This is a big one. They seem to be flip-flopping. Initially, they're like, okay, open world monsters are going to be, your level. And then they're like, no, they're going to make it so that you trail behind and it's going to be 5 levels beneath you. This is what ruined open world, in my opinion. The fact that you basically got 0 XP at a certain point from open world monsters because it was massively reduced. They are now removing that, and it's going to be the same level as you were, which means that it's possible that things like Champion's Demise could be actually good to farm again. We'll have to see. But this is overall a big buff to open world, and I'm very happy about that. Basically, a revert. They just reverted the change. More stashes added and shops added. This is really, really cool. They're going to add stashes to like right outside your waypoints, or shops like the Purvey of Curiosities right outside the waypoints. So you don't have to walk very far distances to be able to deposit your gear. This is really, really big. It's going to really give you a lot of annoyance factor removed from the game. On top of that, they've reworked the mounts. They're going to increase the base speed. They're going to allow you to break through barricades, and they're going to give you less odd movement and cooldown reductions. Now, I'm not quite sure what they mean by like, okay, they're going to make it so that you don't have as many like clipping aspects or slowdown parts. We'll see. I have to actually experience that, but they said they're going to do it, so that's good. Nightmare Dungeon teleports will now start you inside the dungeon. That's a really big kind of annoying factor. You teleport to the dungeon, now you have to enter the dungeon. Like, at that point, just give us the ability to teleport inside the dungeons, and they are. Event monster density is going to be increased and the NPC HP is increased. When they refer to event monster density, we're seeing or considering things like, okay, you have like that adventurer in your dungeon and then like save me, and then the event starts, it's like 3 monsters every 30 seconds or whatever, and then the NPC randomly dies from 1 hit. Okay, these things are really annoying and never worth it for the most part. There are a few that are worth it, but this is just extremely annoying, and now they're going to buff them, which is really, really good. On top of that, I don't know why they just kind of offhand mention this in like, they put a bullet point in one of their slides, but to me, this is like one of the biggest things of this gameplay updates. CC is greatly reduced is what they said. This is going to be a huge change because it's one of the most annoying things to do inside the game is I have to run unstoppable with every build and maybe multiple sources of it, because if I get CC'd once, I'm basically perma CC'd. This can definitely happen in later Nightmare Dungeons, so I'm really happy about this. They're also going to increase the glyph XP, so essentially it's going to kind of match the 40% faster that you're going to get is kind of what they said. They're going to basically give you about 40% more XP. I don't know if that's going to be true or how they're going to do it, but they basically said they wanted to match the 40% faster to get to 100. They are going to do some sigil changes, so a lot of the affixes are going to be changed from what they were before, some of the annoying ones. They removed objectives for some dungeons and they changed the layouts on some of them. This is huge for speeding up Nightmare Dungeon farming and, again, removing the annoying factor of it. Love it. Love it. These are basically glorified greater rifts now, for sure. Like, without the objectives, they're literally greater rifts. Legion events and world bosses have a much reduced spawn time. This is really nice for you people out there that have to, like, show up at certain times. It was every 6 hours before, so it was like, okay, can I get it at 0600? Can I get it at 1200, 1800? Can I get it at 2400? Or I guess 0 o'clock. Oftentimes you couldn't make it for those. So they're reducing the spawn times and kind of staggering it. So now you're going to have options to actually farm the world bosses, which is really nice. Tree of Whispers, the sigils rewarded are now closer to the highest Nightmare Dungeon that you've completed. Gold and XP are massively increased. Now, last time they said this, they actually increased the XP a good amount, but not enough to be farmable. But they want to compete with Nightmare Dungeons is what they said. And so the gold and XP increased. Well, we'll have to see how big that truly is. Caches will also guarantee the slot. This is really, really odd when you get like a ring cache and you open up a 2-handed sword. I don't know why that's a thing, but now they're going to guarantee the slot that you pick up. They also allow you to mark favorites in inventory. Love this. So now instead of marking all the junk, you can mark your favorites. So if you have an item like, hey, I want to keep this item, you could mark that one instead of marking all the other ones. It never made sense to me. Like you'd run like, I don't know, 3 dungeons and you have a full inventory and you have one item that you want to keep, but now you're marking all the junk pieces instead of the one that you actually want to keep. Never made sense to me. Aspects will now be grouped together and there's going to be stash filters. Woo! Baby, I don't know why this wasn't in at day 1, but we have it finally. This is a really, really nice quality of life update, and I'm pretty happy about it. Nothing really to explain here, just the ability to search your stuff quicker, and the fact that they're gonna group the aspects together, so you don't have to like, okay, where are all the aspects that are same? They're gonna be together. There's also gonna be the auto run feature. This is really nice. So I guess you like track a certain part of the map or dungeon or whatever, and it's going to allow you to auto run so you can use your map or go through your inventory. I like this. It's not going to really be impactful for dungeons or anything, but it's nice to have it so that you don't get, I guess you'd say, annoyed walking to certain places. And lastly, we have some item updates. So gems no longer drop. You just get shards and you can craft the certain gems. And enchantment costs overall reduced. They said the initial cost is going to be higher, but the way it scales is going to be significantly lower. And to be honest, the initial cost was not that high. It's like after 4 enchants, it was like millions of gold, and that's where it became not useful anymore. Items dropped will now drop materials instead of items. This is arguably the most important quality of life change in the entire update. I would like to talk about this a little bit more. So what does this mean? Well, basically, when you start doing World Tier 3 and 4, you still drop those sacred items, those ancestral items with like 700 item power. They're basically useless. You pick it up and you're like, yeah, it has great stats, but the base item power is so low that the damage I'm getting from my weapon or armor I'm getting from my armor piece is just worse than me using a higher item power. So instead, what they're going to do is any item that's rare or lower, so legendaries are excluded from this, if you drop a lower item power item, I'm wondering, I'm not 100% sure on how they're going to determine what's a low item power. Maybe you have some sort of, checkbox like, okay, under 700 or over 750, you are going to drop materials instead of the items themselves. This is basically like a loot goblin or like a auto pickup pet that just picks up the material so it doesn't fill up your inventory. Love this so much. This is so good. It's going to reduce the amount of travel distance, or I guess you'd say return times back to the town. Oh my goodness, guys. I do not want to understate how powerful this truly is. So good. The next one, higher level monsters will now drop higher item power items. So at level 150, you're basically guaranteed to get 920 item power, is kind of how I interpreted it. There is a range, but basically the higher level you go, the lower minimum you will get. So before it was like, okay, you could farm like Nightmare Dungeons 100, but who cares, right? Because they give you less loot. But now, actually farming those Nightmare Dungeons 100 are actually going to guarantee you higher item power items, so you actually will improve your character. That's huge. Whisper caches, Helltide caches have a bonus to item drops. So, for example, if you're going to open a cache, you don't like get a 600 item power item, most likely. It's basically just going to give you a higher minimum. So this is quite nice. Before it was really annoying. And lastly, there's going to be the new Uber Duriel. So this kind of ties into the endgame bosses, but basically, when you fight the Uber Duriel, you have a very, very high chance of getting 920 item power drops. It's going to be a 75 range. So you can get essentially like 75 item power lower than that. But it's going to be a really nice way to farm late game items. So that's pretty much it. I tried to get it done in 10 minutes, but there's so much information. I got it done for 60 minutes for you all. That's going to be the summary for the update live stream. The key points for me, just a little bit of a TLDR here. XP is going to be massively increased. You're going to get to level 100 about 40% faster. There's a lot of quality of life, including less trips to the town due to items being auto-salvaged, as well as you're going to be able to go ahead and just grab additional stash around the town. You're also going to be able to farm new endgame bosses to target farm uniques, as well as the new seasonal content, basically Malignant Hearts Part 2, as well as Helltide Zones Part 2. So that's going to wrap it up. Let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. I will say I'm very positive about this. This is totally different from our season 1 patch notes. There is nothing in here that I think is a negative thing, right? There's some things that are mediocre, like maybe the vampiric rites, but there's not like, oh my goodness, they're nerfing all my builds, or there's reducing the quality of life, or they're giving us 0 stash space, right? There's none of that, right? They're still giving us 0 stash space. But like there is a lot of quality of life built into it. There is nothing here that I'm like, wow, that is a bad decision. I think the elemental resistance might be one of them. We'll see next week. Yeah. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.